The city of Phoenix lied to get federal stimulus money.
I would say that people who submitted the grant application, particular officers who submitted the grant application, knew those numbers were incorrect and used them anyway.
Judicial Watch Director of Litigation, Paul Orfanedes, sued the city of Phoenix to protect one of its officers.
It was Roberts versus Harris. Harris was the chief of police at the time.
Sergeant Roberts was a police officer who blew the whistle on phony statistics promulgated by his superiors.
The city of Phoenix was having a lot of issues with kidnappings, partly related, probably substantially related to human smuggling operations coming up from the Mexican border into Phoenix. And so the city of Phoenix had asked for stimulus money to help deal with its kidnapping problem.
To bolster their appeal, the city officials needed to demonstrate how massive and out of control the problem in their city was.
Mayor Phil Gordon had gone before Congress and gave very dramatic testimony about almost every night we get a phone call, my wife or my daughter or my son or my spouse is being held by human smugglers. They're going to harm him or her unless we deliver $50,000. Almost every night, he said, and that said this required this huge mobilization of police resources with 60 police officers sort of going into full action mode. And again, this was almost every night. Chief Harris gave very similar testimony, and in their grant papers where they applied to the grant to the federal government for grant money, they again told that very dramatic story about all these kidnappings almost every night, 387, I believe.
But Sergeant Roberts knew the truth.
Sergeant Roberts worked in a detail that had responsibility for responding to kidnapping, so he was intimately familiar with the number of kidnappings that they were doing, the number of kidnapping investigations that the city was doing every day.
As a dedicated police officer, Sergeant Roberts felt the need to stand up for the truth.
Sergeant Roberts wrote to the Integrity Committee, that's just not right. We're not doing nearly that many actual investigations, maybe 25 to 50 a year at most. And it would appear that false information was given to the federal government in order to get the stimulus money.
His efforts were ambushed by the so-called Integrity Committee.
So what did the Integrity Committee do? It gave that complaint to the police department. Sort of defeated the purpose of having an Integrity Committee.
Having been fed this complaint from a subordinate, the city of Phoenix went into full attack mode.
A big meeting was held. Several series of big meetings were held with the chief of police, the city manager. What are we going to do about Phil Roberts? During the course of our civil lawsuit, we actually got notes from an assistant chief of police, in which the notes directed the chief of police directed the Internal Affairs Bureau of the Phoenix Police Department to open an investigation on Sergeant Roberts for accusing the chief and the mayor of lying. Those are the notes. It's the smoking gun. The city, of course, was denying all this until we forced them to turn over the notes.
This investigation soon grew beyond the city limits.
There was a federal investigation occurred. The Office of Inspector General, the Department of Justice, was brought in to investigate because Sergeant Roberts also, down the road, complained to the Department of Justice. They were told that the individual officer who was leading the internal affairs investigation decided to do this completely on her own with no input from her chain of command, no input from any of her superiors.
Due to the diligence of Judicial Watch, they proved that what the city was representing to the federal investigator was completely false.
We ended up with a series of notes where we could trace that meeting, the department head meeting with the chief of police, the city manager, down to her supervisor, the head of the Internal Affairs Bureau, and then down to her individually, where she was told to do this. So we could trace the whole series of events down to the investigation of Sergeant Roberts.
But the city officials, who had presented false documentation about the numbers of kidnapping, flatly denied responsibility for persecuting Sergeant Roberts. On what evidence did Judicial Watch disprove this lie?
Well, the note said Chief Harris directs that Internal Affairs Division investigates Sergeant Roberts for accusing the mayor and the chief of police of lying about kidnapping statistics. I mean, that's what the note said.
So it did come from the top.
Absolutely, it did. I mean, there's no question about it. And you know, after we discovered this in the civil investigation process, you know, we asked witnesses about it, and they all confirmed it. I mean, even the chief himself acknowledged that he directed that this investigation be done, after the federal officials were told that the individual officer did it on her own.
Now in full CYA mode, the city officials did everything they could to cover for their lie.
The city of Phoenix put together a panel of experts to try to evaluate the number of kidnappings. That panel found there were even more than they reported to the feds.
The city, like many other government agencies, selected a hand-picked blue ribbon panel to provide a dog and pony show to prove the false statements of the city officials.
This panel ended up double counting. I mean, the panel was a scam. You know, it was all designed to whitewash Sergeant Roberts' allegation.
How did the investigation of the mayor come out?
Well, he quit. Well, no, he didn't quit. The chief of police quit. He ended up resigning over this matter.
Oh.
So he's no longer the chief.
And that, what led to his resignation, did he admit that he had a hand in falsifying the statistics?
No, he did not. He defended himself. He said he was relying on the information that he was getting from his chain of command. He was probably right about that. And because there's information, we were able to trace, you know, PowerPoint presentations where the mayor, the chief of police, you know, the high-level city officials were told that there were these 387 kidnapping statistics. The point is that everybody knew that those were not correct, that was an extraordinarily misleading number, that the true number was 25 to 50.
Did you ever find out why it was misleading?
Oh, sure. I mean, everybody knew why it was misleading. Everybody knew that they were double counting, that they were, you know, if there was, we talked a bit earlier about civil forfeiture laws. If there was a kidnapping and there was a forfeiture of a vehicle, that would be treated as a separate kidnapping for the reporting. Again, it's the same exact kidnapping, the same victim, the same perpetrator, only it's being counted twice. So their kidnapping statistics were misleading. Everybody knew they were misleading, and yet they relied on them when they went to the feds. They relied on them when they went to the press. They relied on them when they were trying to pitch a reality TV show or a television series about Phoenix being the kidnapping capital of the world. So.
Did they lie about them to the federal government when they applied for a grant for stimulus money?
I would say the city knew that the information, the city as a whole, knew that the information was incorrect at the time it gave it to the federal government.
What would happen to you or me if we gave misleading or false information to the federal government to get money from them? Why isn't some public official from Phoenix in jail right now? I assume there was testimony in the court hearings of people saying, well, yeah, we all knew these statistics weren't right. Is
depositions, absolutely. Witness after witness says, yeah, there was about 50.
50 versus?
Versus 387.
I see. So are there any consequences? Apparently not. Paul Orfanedes shows how the lawyers can finesse the language to get whatever result they want. In this case, the city of Phoenix walked away with a pile of stimulus money. The chief of police resigned as the sacrificial lamb, and the taxpayers have been defrauded again.
The statistics were what they were. There were 387 kidnapping entries in the computer system for 2008 or 2009. Everybody knew that number was not an accurate number, and everybody knew that that number was very different from the number of kidnappings that the city was actually investigating. So in a sense, it was a true number, but it was a very misleading number, and they actually knew that the number was much less. If you want to characterize that as false as opposed to being misleading, you know, I think it was definitely misleading.
So, misleading or false, nobody seems to care that the city of Phoenix lied to federal officials, specifically to get more of the stimulus money being splashed around the country by Washington. We want to know what you, the viewers, think. Please respond to our survey and leave your comments below. Number 1. Did you know that as a whistleblower, Sergeant Roberts, who reported the stimulus scam, is entitled to collect as a reward 3 times the sum of money recovered for the government? Yes or no? Number 2. Should the Phoenix city officials who falsely claimed their city to be the kidnap capital of the world be prosecuted by the Department of Justice for submitting fraudulent claims for stimulus money? Yes or no? Please be sure to leave your comments below. I'm Leslie Dutton. Thank you.